I commit a crime.
What type of crime did you commit?
I kill husband and wife.
What happened that you killed them?
Because of what they did to me.
Huh?
Because of what they did.
What did they do to you?
I am a mechanic. Na me dey repair the husband and the wife motor. Suddenly the husband can't deceive me. I should dey drive him. I dey drive him. No be say I dey collect salary. I just dey help him. For that helping, that is how my work come affected. Me and him we come out. We go there for hotel. Customers will be calling me. No way to come back. We go come out around 12. Before we come back around 3:30 to 4. When we come back, you go carry 2,000, 2,500, big money, 5,000 give me. I mean, I am a married man. I get pikin, I dey pay house rent. I get many expenses on my head. I complain to this man. This man say God dey, God will take control.
The phone rang for the 5th time that night, and no one picked up. In a quiet home inside Apo Legislative Quarters, Abuja, 2 elderly bodies lay on the floor, throats slit, blood pooling across the tile. Outside, the estate carried on as if nothing had happened. No screams were heard, no alarms were raised. Whoever did this had walked in, done what he came to do, and walked out into the Abuja night without a single neighbor noticing. It would take hours before anyone realized something was wrong. It would take a son's growing panic, a security officer's broken door, and the sight of 2 bodies lying in a pool of their own blood to bring the truth into the light. But by then, the man responsible was already gone, driving through the dark toward Kogi State, carrying with him a secret that would eventually cost him his life. This is the story of Jonathan Marcus, the driver who was trusted inside their home, in their car, and in their lives, and the 2 people who never saw the betrayal coming. If you're watching this from Abuja, drop a comment and let us know. And if you're new here, hit subscribe, because this story is about to take a turn you won't expect. Ezekiel Adebola was 82 years old. His wife, Abiodun, was 67. Together, they lived a quiet life inside Apo Legislative Quarters, a residential estate in the heart of Abuja, the kind of place where neighbors know each other by name, and evenings pass in peaceful routine. By the time they reached this stage of their lives, the couple had settled into the kind of rhythm that comes with decades of marriage. Their days followed familiar patterns, quiet mornings, visits from family, the small routines that define a comfortable, established household. There was nothing about their lives that suggested danger lurked nearby. They were simply an elderly couple, well into their later years, living peacefully in a community built for exactly that kind of life. They had a son, Ezekiel, who checked in on his parents regularly. It was a habit born out of care, a son making sure his aging parents were safe, comfortable, and well. It was a routine so ordinary that no one could have guessed how critical it would become in the days ahead. To help manage the demands of daily life, the Adebolas employed a driver, someone to take them where they needed to go, and to assist with tasks around the home. It was a common arrangement for families in their position, one built on convenience and over time trust. The man they brought into that role was Jonathan Marcus. For years, that arrangement seemed to work exactly as intended. Marcus drove the couple through the streets of Abuja. He helped around the house. He became a familiar presence in their daily lives. Not quite family, but close enough to be trusted with the details of their routines, their home, and their comfort. By all outward appearances, the Adebolas had built a comfortable, settled life, surrounded by the people and routines that gave their later years structure and peace. Ezekiel and Abiodun had no reason to view Marcus as anything other than what he appeared to be: a dependable employee, someone who had earned his place inside their world over years of service. But trust, once given, can be the most dangerous thing a person offers another. And in the case of Ezekiel and Abiodun Adebola, the trust they placed in the man who drove them through their city, who moved freely through their home, would ultimately be repaid in a way neither of them could have ever imagined. Little is known about Jonathan Marcus before he entered the Adebola household, and that gap in his story is part of what makes this case so unsettling. What is confirmed is this: Marcus was hired as the couple's driver, a role that placed him at the center of their daily lives. He wasn't a stranger passing through. He was the man behind the wheel every time Ezekiel or Abiodun needed to go somewhere. He was, according to reports, also called on to help with chores around the house. In many Nigerian households, a driver is more than an employee. He becomes a fixture, present during family outings, aware of routines, familiar with the rhythms of the home he serves. He knows what time the gate opens. He knows who visits and who doesn't. He knows where things are kept. He knows better than almost anyone outside the immediate family the small details that make up the daily life of the people he serves. For Marcus, that access came with a level of proximity most people are never granted into an elderly couple's private world. Over the years, he moved freely through spaces that outsiders would never see. The inside of their home, the quiet moments of their daily routine, the trust extended to someone who had proven himself reliable time and time again. By outward appearances, there was nothing in his role that suggested danger. He was simply staff, one of the many quiet figures who keep a household running without ever stepping into the spotlight. To Ezekiel and Abiodun, he was likely just another part of their settled, comfortable life. A familiar face who had earned his place through years of dependable service. They had no reason to suspect that the man who drove them through Abuja streets, who helped carry out their daily tasks, was capable of what would eventually happen inside their own home. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. The relationship between employer and employee, one built on years of routine and dependence, began to fracture, setting into motion a chain of events that neither Ezekiel nor Abiodun could have seen coming. For years, the arrangement between Jonathan Marcus and the Adebola family held steady. He drove them. He helped around the house. He was, by every outward measure, a dependable presence in their daily lives. But according to reports, that stability didn't last. Disagreements began to surface between Marcus and his employers, the kind of friction that can build quietly in any long-term working relationship, especially one where an employee lives so close to the private details of a family's life. What exactly sparked the tension isn't fully detailed in available reports, but the outcome is clear. The relationship deteriorated to the point that Marcus was dismissed from his position. For a man who had spent years inside his household, dismissal wasn't just the loss of a job. It was the loss of access, of routine, of a place he had occupied inside someone else's world for a very long time. Whatever resentment may have built during those disagreements didn't disappear when he walked out the gate for the last time. If anything, being cut off from a life he had grown accustomed to may have only deepened whatever grievance he was carrying. Reports suggest this falling out sat at the center of what came next. Investigators would later point to Marcus's dismissal as a possible motive, a grievance that festered long after the working relationship had formally ended, growing in the silence that followed his departure from the household. There was no indication, at least publicly, that Ezekiel or Abiodun feared their former driver. There was no report of threats, no warning signs serious enough to prompt concern. To them, it may have simply been the end of an employment arrangement that hadn't worked out. An unfortunate but ordinary parting of ways, the kind that happens in households everywhere. But for Jonathan Marcus, it seems the matter was far from settled. Weeks turned into months. And on the night of April 1st, 2024, whatever had been building inside him during that time finally came to a head in the most violent way imaginable inside the very home he once knew so well. April 1st, 2024. Inside the quiet residential estate of Apo Legislative Quarters, Ezekiel and Abiodun Adebola settled into their home as they had done countless nights before. There was no reason to expect that this evening would be any different from the ones that came before it, but sometime around 11 p.m., that changed. According to reports, Jonathan Marcus made his way into the residence carrying a jackknife. This wasn't a chance encounter or a break-in gone wrong. It was, by all indications, a deliberate return to a home he knew intimately. He knew the layout. He knew the routines. He knew exactly where to find the two people he had once served and exactly how to move through the house without drawing attention. What happened next would leave two elderly people dead and a family shattered. Marcus attacked both Ezekiel and Abiodun, slitting their throats. There was no struggle loud enough to alert the neighbors, no scream that carried beyond the walls of the home. In a residential estate full of families going about their evening, the violence occurring behind one closed door went completely undetected. The same familiarity that once made him a trusted driver now made him capable of moving through their home undetected, carrying out an act neither of them could have anticipated. By the time Marcus left the property, Ezekiel and Abiodun Adebola were gone, killed by a man who had once shared their car rides, their household chores, their daily routines, a man who knew them well enough to walk past their defenses without raising a single alarm. He disappeared into the night, leaving behind a scene that no one would discover for hours, and a crime that would take a determined family and a piece of overlooked evidence to finally solve. For hours after the killings, the house on Moses Adasu Close sat still. No cries for help reached the neighbors, no lights flicked on in alarm. To anyone passing by, it looked like any other night in Apo Legislative Quarters. Quiet, undisturbed, ordinary. That silence was, in many ways, the most chilling part of the case. Two people had been killed inside their own home, and for a stretch of time, the world outside had no idea anything was wrong. The estate carried on, neighbors went about their evenings. Nothing about the outside of that house gave away what had happened within its walls. It's a detail that speaks to how deliberate and controlled the attack had been. There was no chaos loud enough to draw attention, no sign of forced entry violent enough to alert anyone nearby. Whoever did this had moved through the home with unsettling calm, and then vanished into the night without leaving behind any immediate trace for the outside world to notice. In the hours that followed, the estate's usual rhythms continued undisturbed. Gates opening and closing, cars coming and going, the ordinary business of a residential community carrying on exactly as it always had. No one inside that estate had any reason to suspect that behind one closed door, two lives had already been taken. Meanwhile, in Kogi State, Jonathan Marcus was already putting distance between himself and Abuja, carrying with him the knowledge of what he had just done, and perhaps believing that the silence back at the estate would hold long enough for him to disappear completely. Every hour that passed without discovery gave him more room to vanish, more time to put the crime behind him. But silence, however complete, rarely lasts. Somewhere, a phone was still connected to the world Marcus had left behind. And somewhere, his son was about to notice that his parents had gone quiet in a way that felt wrong, a silence that would soon demand an answer. It was Sion Ezekiel, the couple's son, who first sensed something was wrong. He had tried calling his father, Ezekiel Adebola, expecting the usual response. A call picked up, a voice on the other end, confirming that everything at home was as it should be. Instead, the phone rang out. He tried again. Still nothing. For most people, an unanswered call might not mean much. But for his son, who knew his parents' habits, who understood their routines well enough to notice when something felt off, the silence was unusual enough to cause real concern. Ezekiel and Abiodun were elderly. They kept regular patterns. A missed call was one thing, repeated, unanswered calls were another. As his concern grew, Soon made a decision that would ultimately uncover the truth. He reached out for help from the estate's chief security officer, asking that someone check on his parents directly rather than wait for the calls to eventually be returned. It was a decision born out of instinct more than certainty. A son unwilling to dismiss a feeling that something was wrong. When the security officer arrived at the home, there was no answer at the door either. Knocking brought no response. Calling out brought only silence. With growing unease, the decision was made to force entry, breaking down the door to get inside and see for themselves what was happening. What they found confirmed every fear that had been building since the first unanswered call. Inside the home, Ezekiel and Abiodun Adebola lay in pools of their own blood. The quiet, ordinary house that had shown no outward sign of trouble now revealed the full scale of what had happened hours earlier. The couple who had lived peacefully inside Apo Legislative Quarters for so long had been killed in their own home by a man they had once trusted enough to let inside their lives. The discovery set off an urgent chain of events. Police were called. The estate that had carried on undisturbed through the night was suddenly at the center of one of Abuja's most disturbing cases, and the hunt for Jonathan Marcus was about to begin. With Ezekiel and Abiodun Adebola dead and their former driver nowhere to be found, investigators moved quickly. Every hour that passed gave Jonathan Marcus more distance, more time to disappear into a country of over 200 million people. But police had one advantage working in their favor, a lead that would ultimately break the case wide open. According to reports, a private tracker had been placed on one of the victims' phones. It was a detail that, under ordinary circumstances, might have meant nothing. But in the aftermath of the killings, that tracker became the single most important piece of evidence investigators had. When police checked the tracker, they discovered something significant. The SIM card belonging to one of the victims had turned up inside a phone now in Marcus's possession. It was the kind of mistake that unravels even carefully planned crimes. A small oversight that placed Marcus directly at the scene, tying him to the stolen property of the people he was accused of killing. From there, the trail led investigators toward Kogi State, hundreds of kilometers from the quiet estate in Abuja where the killings had taken place. Marcus had fled to Obajana, a town perhaps chosen because it offered distance, anonymity, a place to disappear, while the search for him intensified back in the capital. But distance alone wasn't enough to keep him hidden. Armed with the tracking information and the trail it provided, police closed in on his location. What had started as a desperate flight from the scene of a double murder was about to come to an end. Not through a confession, not through a tip from someone who knew him, but through the quiet persistence of a piece of technology neither he nor perhaps anyone else had fully accounted for. The manhunt that began in the hours after the discovery of two bodies in Apo Legislative Quarters was closing in on its target. And in Obajana, Jonathan Marcus's flight from justice was about to run out of road. In Obajana, Kogi State, Jonathan Marcus believed he had put enough distance between himself and Abuja to disappear. It was a town far removed from Apo Legislative Quarters, far from the estate where two lives had been taken, far from the investigators now working to piece together exactly what had happened on the night of April 1st. For a man on the run, distance can feel like safety, but it rarely holds for long. Using the trail provided by the phone tracker, police were able to narrow down Marcus's location with enough precision to move in. What followed was the culmination of days of investigative work, tracing a stolen SIM card, following digital breadcrumbs left behind by a man who may not have realized how easily technology could betray him. When officers arrived in Obajana, they found Jonathan Marcus exactly where the evidence had pointed. There was no dramatic standoff, no prolonged chase through the streets of the town, just a quiet, decisive moment when a manhunt that had stretched across state lines finally came to an end. Marcus was taken into custody, brought face to face with the consequences of what he had done inside the Adebola home weeks earlier. For investigators, the arrest was only the beginning of building a case strong enough to secure a conviction. Circumstantial evidence, including the tracked phone, placed Marcus firmly in the frame. But police needed more than a trail of digital evidence to close this case completely. They needed Marcus's own words. In the hours and days that followed his arrest, investigators worked to piece together his movements, his motive, and ultimately, his own account of what happened that night. What they would obtain next, a recorded admission, would become one of the most damning pieces of evidence in the entire case, removing any lingering doubt about who was responsible for the deaths of Ezekiel and Abiodun Adebola. For the family left behind, the arrest brought a measure of relief, but not closure. Seon Ezekiel, the son whose concern had set the entire discovery in motion, now had to watch as the justice system took over, a process that would take Jonathan Marcus from a police cell in Kogi State to a courtroom in Abuja, where the full weight of what he had done would finally be laid out before a judge. The manhunt was over, but the reckoning was only just beginning. evidence built from phone trackers and digital trails can point investigators toward a suspect. It can place him near a crime scene, connect him to stolen property, and narrow a manhunt down to a single town. But to truly close a case like this one, prosecutors need something more direct, an account from the accused himself. In the case against Jonathan Marcos, that account came in the form of a video. According to reports, during the course of the investigation, Marcos was recorded admitting to causing the deaths of Ezekiel and Abiodun Adebola. It was the single most damning piece of evidence gathered against him, a moment where the man accused of walking into his former employer's home and taking their lives spoke on record about what he had done. For investigators, a confession changes the entire complexion of a case. Circumstantial evidence, a tracked phone, a fled suspect, a motive rooted in a soured working relationship builds a strong picture, but it still leaves room for doubt, for alternate explanations, for a defense to argue that the pieces don't add up to certainty. A recorded admission removes much of that room. It transforms a case built on inference into one built on the words of the accused himself. What exactly Marcos said in that video and under what specific circumstances it was recorded isn't laid out in full detail in available reports, but its existence and its role in the case against him is clear. It became a central piece of evidence prosecutors would carry into the courtroom, alongside witness testimony and the circumstantial trail that had led police to Abuja in the first place. For a family already grieving the loss of Ezekiel and Abiodun, a confession offers something that circumstantial evidence alone cannot: certainty. There is a particular kind of pain in not knowing exactly what happened in the final moments of a loved one's life, in being left to piece together a tragedy from fragments of evidence and speculation. A confession, however difficult to hear, closes that gap. It replaces uncertainty with fact. For Marcos, the recorded admission would follow him from the police station in Kogi State to the courtroom in Abuja, becoming a permanent part of the record that would determine his fate. Whatever justification or explanation he may have offered for his actions, the confession stood as an acknowledgement of what he had done, an admission that no defense strategy could fully undo. With the manhunt over and a confession secured, the case against Jonathan Marcos moved into its next phase.
I commit a crime.
What type of crime did you commit?
I kill husband and wife.
What happened that you killed them?
Because of what they did to me.
Huh?
Because of what they did.
What did they do to you?
I am a mechanic. Na me dey repair the husband and the wife motor. Suddenly the husband can't deceive me. I should dey drive him. I dey drive him, no be say I dey collect salary. I just dey help him. For that helping, that is how my work can affect it. Me and him, we come out, we go there for hotel. Customers will be calling me, no way to come back. We go come out around 12, before we come back around 3:30 to 4. When we come back, you go carry 2,000, 2,500, big money, 5,000 give me. And me, I am a married man. I get pikin, I dey pay house rent. I get many expenses on my head. I complain to this man. This man say God dey, God will take control. One day I leave this man. I know they help him for over 1 month. The man send message for me, say that I am very wicked. I can't call and respond to him, say whether I don't steal from him or I don't carry something for him house or for him wife. He say no, but I know the condition where he dey. Why I know the agree come. I say carry driver. He say no, not be every time he dey come out. But if it is me, it's only me he like to be carrying him, because now me they keep in secret. We dey always run about hotel by hotel. He know. Me, I did not go the house to kill the wife. It's because say the wife is around. If not, nothing the wife do me. The wife never do me anything. I did not kill the man because of money.
What did you kill because of?
Because of scattering my work. Because of what he do. Over 10 years. I am not his driver. I am just helping him. He never pay me. He never. Yes. He never helped me for one day, say, see this 50,000 text, solve your problem. He never.
Okay. So how do you feed your family?
Through my mechanic engineering work.
Enough in your own estimation to kill him?
So,
Was that enough?
no frustration.
Young man, please, I want to understand. Someone called you that you should come and work for him. People do not bargain price. Was the work for free, or you agree that he will be paying you monthly?
We did not bargain anything, me and him. Me, I did not know, because he said once in a week if I am free, and sometimes if I am not free, I used to tell him.
How did you assess the house, and how did you?
They know me very well.
Yes.
The more I call my name, says Jonathan, they can open the door for me.
Only
No,
two of them living there.
with house help, but the house help no day.
It's okay.
Yeah,
So how did you kill them?
I use knife.
How? You just describe the.
I use knife kill them.
Stab? Did you stab them on their stomach?
I did not stab
How did you kill
anybody.
them?
So after that, what did you do?
I went out. I locked the door.
The evidence had been gathered. The suspect was in custody. Now it would fall to the Nigerian justice system to weigh everything that had been uncovered. The tracker, the trail to Kogi State, the video admission, and determine what would become of the man responsible for the deaths of Ezekiel and Abiodun Adebola. The trial was about to begin. The case of Jonathan Marcus made its way to an FCT High Court sitting in Jabi, Abuja, where the full weight of the evidence gathered against him would finally be laid out before a judge. What had begun as a discovery of two bodies inside a quiet Apo Legislative Quarters home was now a formal criminal proceeding, with prosecutors tasked with proving beyond reasonable doubt that Marcus was responsible for the deaths of his former employers. The prosecution built its case around three central pillars. First, there was the circumstantial evidence, the phone tracker that had led police to Marcus in Abuja, and the discovery of a victim's SIM card in his possession, tying him directly to the scene and to property taken from the home that night. Second, there was witness testimony, adding further detail and corroboration to the timeline investigators had pieced together. And third, and perhaps most significant, there was the video in which Marcus had admitted to causing the deaths, a recorded acknowledgement that left little room for an alternate explanation. Together, these three strands of evidence formed a case that left the court with a clear picture of what had happened on the night of April 1st, 2024. A former driver, dismissed after disagreements with the couple he once served, returning to their home armed with a jackknife and taking both of their lives. Throughout the proceedings, the court would have weighed not only the strength of the evidence but the nature of the crime itself, the betrayal of trust at its core, the years Marcus had spent inside the Adebola household, the access he had been given, and the way that access had ultimately been used against the very people who extended it. For Seon, Ezekiel, and the rest of the family, the trial represented the final step toward accountability. The son, whose concern had triggered the initial discovery, whose insistence that something was wrong had led to the broken door and the devastating scene inside, now sat through a process designed to answer the question that had haunted the family since that night. Would justice be served for Ezekiel and Abiodun? The court proceeded under Nigeria's Penal Code, specifically sections 220 A and B, provisions addressing culpable homicide punishable with death, a framework that would ultimately determine the severity of the sentence Marcus would face if convicted. As the trial drew to a close, all that remained was the verdict, a moment that would bring to an end a case that had unfolded over more than 2 years, from the night of the killings to the courtroom in Jabi, where Jonathan Marcus's fate would finally be decided. On Wednesday, July 1st, 2026, more than 2 years after the killings of Ezekiel and Abiodun Adebola, the FCT High Court in Jabi delivered its verdict in the case against Jonathan Marcus. Presiding over the case, the judge weighed the evidence that had been laid out over the course of the trial. The phone tracker that led investigators to Abuja, the stolen SIM card found in Marcus's possession, the witness testimony that corroborated the timeline of events, and a video confession in which Marcus admitted to causing the deaths of his former employers. Taken together, the evidence left little room for doubt. the court found Jonathan Marcus guilty of culpable homicide under sections 220A and B of the Penal Code. Under section 221, the punishment for this offense is death. The judge sentenced Marcus to death by hanging for a man who had once been a trusted presence inside the Adebola household, driving them through the streets of Abuja, helping with the daily tasks of their home. The verdict marked the final chapter of a betrayal that began with a falling out and ended with 2 lives lost. The years he had spent inside their home, the access he had been given, the trust that had been extended to him, all of it had ultimately been turned into the very means by which he carried out the killings. For Seon Ezekiel and the rest of the family, the verdict closed a chapter that had opened on the night of April 1st, 2024, a night that began with unanswered phone calls and ended with a discovery no family should ever have to make. It would not undo the loss of Ezekiel and Abiodun Adebola, but it delivered the accountability the family had waited more than 2 years to see. The case of Jonathan Marcus stands as a stark reminder of how quickly trust, once broken, can turn deadly, and how even the quietest, most ordinary households can become the setting for tragedy when the person closest to the family is the one who turns against them.